Okay, people. This video right here that I'm about to play is called Creation Live. It's a video by Carl Ball. You can find his website at www.creationevidence.com. They're in Texas. This is the first video that I saw that got me on the Creation Evidence Foundation of Truth. And it's a great video. You can't get this video anymore, but I asked them if I could have permission to uh, copy this video and present it on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook channel. So I do have permission. They said you can also have permission if you promise not to use it for monetary gains. In other words, trying to sell it. So I'm not about trying to make money, but present truth to you so that you can learn just how we were created. He's a scientist. He's a PhD. He has uh, degrees in all the excavation requirements, and you listen to the video and he goes into great detail as far as what he used to teach about evolution and now he teaches creation. I've had this video for a while. I've given it out to another person. But this is my personal copy. I'm happy I have it because every time I watch it, it just blows me away as far as um, how we're created and what we are capable of. So let's watch this video. And if you hear anything in the background, that's my little Nikki recording. I mean, eating. Don't have a computer, so I have to deal with what I have to deal with. But I just wanted to share this because you need to watch this. And he also has a ton of videos on YouTube. If you go look under Creation Evidence Museum, you can find a ton of evidence, a ton of proof that helps with the creation account. Um, he's a little he's a little long in the tooth when it comes to his descriptions. So just be patient, but listen to what he has to say. And I hope you can listen to it good because I'm going to turn it up as much as I can. And we can go from there. So share it, pass it on, and let's enjoy the show.
Every reflective individual worldwide is involved in the creation-evolution controversy. Are we and the universe products of natural circumstances? Did we arrive by special creation of a divine designer? These questions are contemplated and answers are given with scientific scrutiny in this lecture before a live audience. Dr. Carl Baugh, the founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum, gives you answers you can live with. Welcome to Creation Live.
Team, I'm very glad you showed up for the seminar. Today we're going to be talking about creation versus evolution. And I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that you've been asking. Every person around the world is reflecting on four major questions. These young people in the audience, hi young people, very glad, let's give a hand to these young people. They are already asking these questions. Every speaker in the audience, every professor in the audience, every parent in the audience has asked these questions for a lifetime. It is inherent within the mind and the facility of man to automatically ask these questions and hopefully receive answers to these questions. These questions are, first of all, who am I? Who are you? Where did I come from? How'd you get here? Life origins. That primarily is what we're going to be talking about today. Thirdly, what am I doing here? What's my purpose here? And fourthly, where am I going? After this, what next? Everyone around the world is asking these questions. I have lectured in over 20 countries and approximately that many cultures around the world over a period of decades. And people are always asking this question. Who am I? Where did I come from? What's my purpose here? And where am I going? It is within the very character of man to ask and try to receive answers to these great questions. Team, I want you to know the answers, and after the final gamut is laid, after we have run the research query, after we have finally arrived, I don't want there to be any basic surprises for you. That reminds me, a few days ago, I was in a doctor's office getting ready for my weekly allergy shot. And I picked up a little Reader's Digest article, and it told about a couple that needed a watchdog. They decided that the neighborhood was getting a little questionable, and they needed a watchdog. So the man went to the pet store and said, I need a good watchdog. The manager said, I've got exactly what you need. He said, this is a watchdog. He pulled out a Pekingese. And the fellow said, no, I need a watchdog. He said, this is a watchdog. This little fella knows karate. Knows karate? I said, yeah. He said, see that box over in the corner? Karate that box. And that little fella lunged for the corner, and in 2 minutes, that box was in shreds. Pretty impressive. He said, well, let me show you this. See that chair? Yeah. Karate that chair, fella. And the little dog lunged at the chair, and in 2 minutes, it was in splinters. The guy said, I'll take it. That's the watchdog I want. He got home, walked in the door, said to his wife, here's our watchdog. That's a watchdog. You bought the wrong dog. No. This dog knows karate. She said, karate my foot. Surprise. Now, when we get to the bottom line, and after the research project is all over, I don't want there to be any surprises for you. So I'm going to try to help you answer these 4 great questions of life. These questions have to do with the origin and maintenance of the universe. Now, when we speak of life origins and try to answer the question, how did I get here? How did this entire cosmos arrive? There are various thoughts that have been running through the reflections of mankind for generations. There are those who think the universe has always been here. That's called the steady state concept. But that doesn't work scientifically. The universe has not always been here. Everything must have a beginning. And particularly, since we know that the second law of thermodynamics is in effect, it's called the law of entropy. That means that everything is running down. That shows mathematically and scientifically that everything had to have an origin, had to be wound up to begin with. So the steady state, always existing cosmos has no validity in scientific analysis. So immediately that's thrown out. There are others who say, well, there really isn't a universe here at all. It's all illusory. It's just your imagination. You're just thinking you see tangible objects. You're just thinking that life is going on. It's all in the mind of man. Well, that doesn't work scientifically, and it doesn't work in experience, because we can measure, qualify, and quantify all of the basic effects in the universe. We can measure the size and the mass of the electron. We can measure cause and effect. These are tangible expressions of real entities. It's not illusory. So that brings us to the 2 basic concepts that are left, and the only 2 that have any validity in scientific investigation. They are, first of all, the evolutionary concept that all of this began with a Big Bang. And this is called the evolutionary mindset or idea or concept. Began with a small unit of matter, according to the evolutionary theory. That matter, some say, was the size of a pinhead. Some say all of the matter of the universe was compressed into the size of a basketball or something in between. And then in a very brief moment of time, like 10 to the minus 46th power of a second, that entire bit of matter expanded inflationarily into an expression we call the Big Bang, and it heated to billions of degrees in temperature. Well, now wait a minute. In order to postulate that concept, you must invoke laws of physics that are not operational today. So at the very outset, that concept is not scientific. It is at best a metaphysical, speculative journey. It is a theory with no plausibility, scientifically at least. It is a religious mindset and concept. Again, let me state that. You must apply physics that are not currently in operation. That is not scientific. According to this theory, after the inflationary time, like in a few seconds of time, then you have about 300,000 years that pass, the universe being transparent at all that time, or at the beginning of that time, so you can actually see what's going on. Ultimately, you have the expressions of galaxies and suns, coalition of energy, and about 4.6 billion years ago, according to that theory, the Earth and the solar system were formed. After that, life processes about 3.5 billion years ago began to form in early bacteria. After that, living processes like trilobites and so forth began to evolve. Finally, within our preceding generation, particularly in the mind of Charles Darwin, the universe realized its own existence within the mind, the phobic, chaotic mind of Charles Darwin, who then said, the chaos that we find in the universe has realized its own existence in my own chaotic mind. Therefore, everything can be explained naturalistically. I want you to know, on scientific grounds, that will not work. There is an alternative that is far more academic and scientific, plausible and consistent, and that's called the creation model, where the Creator as a personal entity expresses his own glory and his energy in a process, an immediate process we call special fiat creation, and all of the space-time dimension, all of the materialization within that space-time dimension found itself expressed in a perfectly balanced, symphonic, orchestrated universe with living systems. And finally, during those literal 6 days of creation, that Creator expressed himself within an entity that could reflect upon and have communion with that Creator himself. And the product of that creation sits in this audience today. Kids, in the past, I have believed and taught evolution. I do not believe nor teach evolution. Evolution, simply stated, means that there was existing non-living material, and from that non-living material there was an intelligence that self-assimilated, a design that self-assimilated, and finally, as life progressed through plants and animals, that assemblage of intelligence met its ultimate composite repository, ultimate form in the mind of man that could then reflect back upon that creation. But all of that, all of what was going on was naturalistic and was not a creation that required a creator. That is evolution. That non-living material, self-organized to be living material, and finally that living material is so complicated that in the mind of man we can reflect upon the whole thing. That is the theory of evolution. But I want you to know, evolution won't work. I came today to tell you two things. First of all, evolution won't work. Let me show you why we know it won't work. First, the model itself is in error. In order to have a scientific theory or a scientific outlook, you must have a model that explains how that fits into everything else. Well, the model of evolution is called the geologic column. The entire theory is expressed here. Normally, the geologic column is expressed as an ever-ascending series of evolutionary steps and progression, and we normally think as we look at the concept that ultimately all of this will become more complicated and more complicated. But when you really examine the theory of evolution, there are basic concepts that are inevitable. First of all, everything must have a naturalistic explanation. That's the reason it begins with a Big Bang. But wait a moment. That Big Bang, if it ever occurred, and it did not occur, but for a moment, let's speculatively consider that it has occurred. In our speculation, if the Big Bang occurred, there had to be previously existing material, and that literally opposes the laws of physics. If you begin with previously existing material, you have to have a cause for that material. You have to have an energy source that is consistent with a tangible expression of that material. For that material is not chaotic. You look within the galaxies, they are whirling in a spiral arm that fits the Fibonacci series of the golden mean. There's design even in their motion. You look within the atom, there is design within that atom. There is a nucleus with subatomic particles. There's a shell or phase of energy outside in which and through which the electrons orbit the nucleus of that atom. All of that is designed with precision. There is what physicists call a nuclear glue. Some unknown factor holds it together. All of that requires design. So, from the very outset of the evolutionary model, we have a major problem. And the problem is, you can't get that designed material without a designer. That design material, even occurring without our current laws of physics, as physicists, evolutionary physicists admit, requires a designer for that material. Then you have other major problems. Watch this. Underlying the concept of evolution is that there was a Big Bang some 12 to 15 to 20, perhaps 30 billion years ago. Debris from that Big Bang settled or coalesced in the arm of Orion, on the edge of the Milky Way galaxy, in our area we call the solar system. Debris from that Big Bang settled here. Ultimately, all of these beautiful life processes eventuated as products of that debris. Team, what that is saying is that your 3-pound brain, your tangible appendages, your thought process, your offspring, including these beautiful children, their puppy dogs and their kitty cats, all of these wonderful things that you see and know and feel are really debris from an explosion. Now, no one ever saw an explosion create anything. It disrupts everything. What this concept is, watch closely. Are you still awake? What this concept states is that you really are a bunch of trash. Not is right. That's the underlying concept. Therefore, if you're the product of a giant explosion called the Big Bang, and of accidental combinations, collocations of the elements and debris from that big bang, that big explosion, you're really a bunch of trash. Therefore, life has no meaning. Life has no purpose. Morality doesn't mean a thing. Associations don't mean a thing because they have no purpose involved. Therefore, it's logical that you would have a chaotic mind and that you would have chaotic expression of morality without any hope. Evolutionary concept is consistent with its theory because that rules out any moral responsibility and ultimately any accountability to a creator himself. Now, back to the concept. Written in the very warp and woof, the very design, the fabric itself, written into all of this is that you're really worthless. But it gets worse than that. What's this? Leading evolutionary scholars admit that it really isn't an ever-ascending geologic column that expressed us in the evolution of time and space, but instead, it's an oval. It started as a big bang. Living processes eventually evolved. But if there's enough matter in the universe, all of this is going to collapse back upon itself. Ultimately, that means all of these beautiful children or their offspring far removed in the future. Their puppy dogs and kitty cats and all of their dreams, all of their values are going to collapse in a fiery explosion that's called the Big Crunch. Or, evolutionary theory states that if there is not enough mass to cause the universe to collapse back upon itself, then these whirling worlds and blazing suns and spiraling nebulae will ultimately stretch out and out and out and out, farther and farther apart in the dim, distant future. They'll get so far apart there's not enough energy to run the living systems. Therefore, the universe will die in a big freeze. Either way, according to this theory, we began with a big bang. All of this will die with a big crunch or the big freeze. No matter which way we take it, no one has any hope in the ultimate future. Written within the very fabric of the evolutionary model is hopelessness and worthlessness. I just don't want you to have any surprises when you draw your conclusions and arrive at an ultimate answer that satisfies your inquiry. I want there to be no surprises. The basis for evolutionary theory is worthlessness and hopelessness. So, number one, it won't work in human experience. Man innately looks for hope, has dreams. Teenagers see all of life through an ultimate utopia. They look forward to something in the future that'll be meaningful. Their lives being meaningful. Their accomplishments being meaningful. That is written into the very fabric of life itself. Relationships are written into the fabric of life. Children not only love their parents, and that can be understood by incubation, but children love other children. They're more attracted to other children than to anyone else. There are written within their thought processes individual values and a value system. All of that goes contrary to the evolutionary concept. So first of all, it won't work in life experience. It is inconsistent with a normal thought process of man. Secondly, the model itself won't work. I came to let you know that the evolutionary model, called the paradigm of evolution, expressed as the geologic column, just won't work. Here at Glen Rose, we have excavated lepidodendron plants. They're expressed here in what is supposed to be 250 million year old Carboniferous period. We've excavated in the same layer lepidodendron plants, dinosaurs, By the way, kids, I dig dinosaurs. Literally. Dig them out of the rock and out of the ground. And it's a very precise technique required. I like dinosaurs. You like dinosaurs? Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Now, in the same layer with these Lepidodendron, we excavated 2 major dinosaurs. In the same layer with them, we excavated cat prints. In the same layer with them, we excavated human footprints. And all of this is available on the internet in a 500-page dissertation. We excavated, in addition to that, some trilobites. So you have trilobites at the bottom of the column, Lepidodendron 250 million years later, dinosaurs 400 million years later, cats just 6 million years ago, man just 3.5 million years ago. In other words, in our excavation, we've encompassed the entire geologic column, showing that it does not express 600 plus million evolutionary years of time progression and evolutionary continuation. Instead, all of these systems lived simultaneously. Now let's go to the basic concept. What our controversy is worldwide is that man and dinosaur lived contemporaneously. The evolutionary community just ignores the rest of it, and they say it's absolutely impossible for dinosaurs and man to have coexisted. Oh, is that right? In that 500-page dissertation, you'll be able to see actual excavations in process, the removal of the limestone layers, the delicate excavation through the clay marl, then the excavation on the layer beneath, where we have, to this date, excavated 228 dinosaur footprints, and we've excavated, to this date, 58 human footprints. We also have a man-made artifact in the same Cretaceous system of layering. We also have a human finger. Specialists have been able to identify this as the 4th finger on the left hand of a girl. And a major medical facility CAT scanned or CT scanned this material, this fossil, and said there is no question that it's a fossilized human finger. Well, wait a minute. Found in the same layer with dinosaur remains. According to the theory of evolution, these dinosaurs around Glenrose walked the mud flats about 105 million years ago. But man supposedly did not evolve until 3.5 million years ago. Our excavations and attendant scientific research that is currently being published, like the human footprints among dinosaur footprints found in Russia, some have also been found in Australia, some have been found in Utah. So these composite research procedures destroy the evolutionary column. I came to tell you, evolution won't work. Not only, yes, you can clap for that, yes. But we've gone further than that. There are bits of evidence that the dinosaurs have been seen within the last few hundred years. I brought with me an enlarged photograph done by Don Patton of a wall inside one of the Natural Bridges National Monument facilities. This is under one of those great natural bridges outside Blanding, Utah. The desert varnish is over all of this. We brought a leading scholar, Dr. Don Shockey, who is a specialist in examining this desert varnish, showing that this was original. It is not fabricated. And we found this Anasazi Indian warrior, pointed out by a very fine scholar from Portland, Oregon. And this man, this PhD, named Dennis, a very fine scholar, pointed this material out, and then he pointed out this dinosaur. Watch closely. Kids, look at this. There's the eye, the mouth, the big head, the long neck. Do you see that? The 4-legged body, and then the great long tail. You see that? In order to have drawn or etched such a perfect representation of a dinosaur, those Anasazi Indians had to see that dinosaur first. They arrived on the American scene 400 AD and disappeared 1300 AD. Within that time frame, they had to see that creature. Later, they drew wings and a sun, but close examination shows that those were later additives. They too have the desert varnish, meaning that they were genuine, but at a later date. In addition to that, this PhD from Portland, Oregon, a very fine scholar, took us to Black Dragon Canyon. And here, with a pictograph, the Indians had drawn on this wall, and the desert varnish is there as well, a creature with an 8.5-foot wingspan, leathery type wings, no feathers, a crest, a beak, teeth in his beak, claws on his wings, and a tail. Now, what kind of creature has leathery type wings, a crest, a beak, teeth, claws on his wings, and a reptilian tail? Any idea? A pterodactyl. In order to have drawn this, those Fremont Indians of that area had to see the creature before. That means that within the history of the United States of America, there have been sightings of pterodactyl and sauropod-type dinosaurs, particularly the Tyrannosaurus is represented there. Well, that means that man and dinosaur lived contemporaneously. That totally shatters the evolutionary model, but that's not all. I brought a text to class today. Now, fortunately, I'm not going to read this text. Aren't you glad? But I have read the text. Released just a short while ago, professor of Lehigh University, a major American university, this professor, Dr. Michael Behe, released this book, Darwin's Black Box. In it, he shows that people like Sir Frederick Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe were right to begin with when they stated that the odds that life could have originated on planet Earth by naturalistic evolutionary means, or that life could have originated anywhere in the universe by naturalistic evolutionary means, has one chance in 10 to the 40,000th power. In fact, they said it is so impossible. Anything, by the way, beyond one chance in 10 to the 20th power has zero chance of occurring. And they said, let's illustrate how impossible this is. They said it would be easier for a whirlwind, a tornado, to sweep through a junkyard and assemble a Boeing 747 jet in flight out the other end than it would be for life to have originated by evolutionary means. Now Dr. Michael Behe announces academically that life could not have progressed by evolutionary means. In Darwin's Black Box, he throws down the gauntlet to the evolutionary scholars, and he's a major scholar. And in so doing, he states, the blood clotting system, the immune system, the respiratory and reproductive systems are so complicated. Scientifically, it is absolutely impossible for them to have progressed by evolutionary means. Team, we have already seen that the evolutionary model just doesn't work. Among other things, we saw that when Dr. Dennis Swift of Portland, Oregon, met us in Utah, he showed us these pictographs and petroglyphs on the walls. Some of these had been etched by the Anasazi Indians, others had been etched and painted by the Fremont Indians of that area in more recent times. In both instances, Dr. Dennis Swift showed us that man on the North American continent has cited dinosaurs within the last few hundred years. This disrupts the theory of evolution. So we've seen that evolution doesn't work because it cannot explain the origin of the cosmos, it cannot explain the origin of life, it cannot explain the progression of life. We saw from the work of Dr. Michael Behe that you cannot evolve one system into another. The system has to appear intact and complete. And then let me let you know that the evolutionary theory does not work from population statistics. Every year, we are increasing the population of planet Earth by about 2%. And this has been true since records have been kept. Now, that 2% is diminished somewhat because of famine, peril, war, etc., diseases. But over the long haul, there is a rather consistent progression. Now, if man arrived 1,000,000 years ago in a very complicated form, like Neanderthal or Homo sapien, in the form of Cro-Magnon man. Cro-Magnon man, by the way, had a brain capacity, a cranial capacity larger than yours. The average Neanderthal had a brain capacity larger than our brain capacities. So if man arrived about 1,000,000 years ago in one form or another, the evolutionary theory has a major problem. Incidentally, that theory states that man arrived about 3.5 million years ago. Well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And let's just go back to 1,000,000 years BP, before present. Dr. John Morris has published statistical analysis showing that at the growth rate of 2% per year, the population of planet Earth during that time would have produced 10 to the 8600th power of human beings. That's 10 to the 8600 power of human beings. Now wait a minute. If that many human beings have been on planet Earth in the last 1,000,000 years, where are the bones? Where are the graves? Oh, how big is that number? Well, let me illustrate how big that number is. The electron is the smallest unit of measurable material we know anything about. How many electrons are there in the universe? There are 10 to the 80th power of electrons. Now wait a minute. You put all of the whirling galaxies and the blazing suns and all of the mass of our solar system together. The electrons, smallest unit of measurable material, we have subatomic particles that are smaller, but we can't measure them. We measure them only by inference in comparison with the electron. You put all of the entire cosmos together, and the total number of electrons is 10 to the 80th power. But now, there's a lot of space in the atom. Let's cram that space with electrons. There's a lot of space between atoms. Let's cram that space with electrons. The entire universe, if crammed with electrons until you couldn't get one more electron in the entire universe, that number would be 10 to the 130th power of electrons. Wait a minute. If man arrived on planet Earth 1,000,000 years ago, increasing at our current rate of 2% per year, there would have been and would be on planet Earth today over 10 to the 8,000th power of people. There are not enough spaces in the universe for that many electrons, let alone that many bodies. I'm simply trying to tell you that evolution doesn't work. Now, let's take it a step further. If you take the population statistics, accounting in this 2% growth rate for war and famine and diseases, diminishing about a third of that each year, and then you start with the 2/3, basically. Over a period of 5,000 years, you would have between 5 and 6 billion people on planet Earth. And that's exactly what we have today, between 5 and 6 billion people on planet Earth. That brings me to ask the question, is the creation model scientifically viable? Well, I came to tell you that it is. First of all, from the standpoint of population statistics, it is totally viable. Secondly, from the standpoint of the Earth's electromagnetic field, the creation model is totally viable. You see, we're losing the Earth's electromagnetic field. Dr. Thomas Barnes found that we're losing it at an exponential rate. Oh, who's Dr. Thomas Barnes? At the time he made this discovery and ran these calculations, he was chairman of the physics department, University of Texas at El Paso. So he's not an incidental scholar by any means. He's a major scholar. And he found that at the rate of exponential decay of the Earth's electromagnetic field, if you go back anything approaching 10,000 years ago, that field would have been so strong that enzymes necessary for living processes like those in our immune systems. Those enzymes could not hold together with the intensity of that field. Go back anything approaching 15,000 years ago, just a drop in the bucket on the evolutionary scale of things. And you'll find that just 15,000 years ago, at that current rate of decay, meaning that in the past it would have been much, much stronger. Just 15,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field would have had the strength of a magnetic star, which means that many of the atoms that make up our universe and our living systems on planet Earth could not have held together. I'm saying that when you look at this thing scientifically, forgetting the religious aspect altogether, look at it scientifically, creation and recency are the only plausible explanations. Let's take it a step further. Look at the history of man. Now, there's a lot of speculation in anthropology, but let's take the basic facts as they are. I did a 500-page dissertation, and much of the bulk of that had to do with man and his capacity. And I found that there were 56 primary characteristics that all men had originally. They arrived very sophisticated. They arrived with the ability to speak and to think and to calculate. Man arrived on the scene sophisticated. He is not a grunting, higher primate. He arrived as a very sophisticated individual. Let's see just how sophisticated he really is. And this is devastating to evolutionary theory and supports the creation model. Just how sophisticated is man? Every person in this audience and every person worldwide, living person, has a brain. And that brain weighs about 3 pounds. Now, hold on, let's take a ride. How sophisticated is that brain? That 3-pound brain has over 100 billion cells. Now, that brain, every second of your life, receives, analyzes, and transmits over 100 million signals. That brain automatically monitors the cellular activity, monitors the organ activity, the temperature, so many complicated things. Over 100 million signals are received and transmitted, analyzed in the process every second of your life. If you learned something new every second and associated that with what you already know, and remember, we have over 100 billion brain cells. Each of those brain cells is connected to 50,000 other brain cells. It's an organized, orchestrated network that not only appeared totally sophisticated in order to appear at all, but appeared ready to assimilate language. By the way, we didn't teach these kids language. They assimilated that language, good and bad. Automatically, the human brain assimilates language. It is designed to do so. With its 100 plus billion brain cells, each one connected to over 50,000 other brain cells, if we learned something new every second of our life and associated that with everything else that we already know, it would take over 3 million years to exhaust the capacity of your brain. Now, wait a minute. I think that deserves a hand. Incidentally, I didn't do it. My brain was designed, and it functions fairly well. Now, it would take over 3 million years to use up the capacity of that brain. That totally flies in the face of evolutionary theory. For evolutionary theory says that organisms develop according to the need and purpose in their local ecosphere. Well, those organisms are going to die in a matter of years. Every individual in this auditorium is going to die within a matter of years unless the Creator intersects our experience and comes back and straightens the whole thing out. That's what we really are looking forward to. By the way, there is hope in the creation model. But now, in our current state, we're programmed to die. Well, if that's natural, according to evolutionary theory, why did we develop a brain that is supposed to go on for over 3 million years, learning something new every second and associating and assimilating that with everything else we already know? By the way, now are you still awake? Let me give you something. You don't learn something new every second of your life. You actually assimilate about 10,000 thoughts in a 24-hour period. Now that's only 1/4 of the capacity being used. Thereby, under normal human experience, that means that your brain was designed to go on for about 12 million years in its current state. But you're going to die after a few decades. So am I. Now, how does evolution explain that? It is totally inconsistent with evolutionary need. We only have the need to produce what our current ecosphere will allow. Oh, but it's better than that. During the last month of fetal gestation, before the baby is born, over 100 billion more brain cells develop. 250,000 per second develop in the fetus. Your brain is marvelous. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, actually, by the time you were born, due to the hostility in the incubation chamber, now the mother's womb is designed with an amazing creation impact, total impact for herself and for the baby that she's incubating. However, currently that's a very hostile environment. It doesn't get enough oxygen for one thing. And you know, after about 2 minutes, if your brain starves for oxygen, the brain cells begin to die. So there's not enough oxygen available through the respiratory system of that precious mother to feed these developing brain cells to keep them alive in that precious infant. And that infant is alive within the mother. So, watch closely. Due to the hostile environment, due to lack of oxygen, due to imbibing free radicals and damaged material, toxins themselves, that's a very hostile, toxic environment in which that baby's being incubated. So he loses half his brain cells before he's ever born. But in the creation model, remember the earth had a smaller diameter. It has expanded, and even secular geophysicists admit that it has expanded. It expanded during the days of Peleg, as described in the manual. Let's diminish the earth back to about 88 to 90% its current diameter. If you do that, you invoke the law of universal gravitation, which means that you would attract more molecules at sea level, which means that at sea level, you would have approximately twice our current atmospheric pressure. Did you get that? Are you still awake? At Texas A&M University, they found that if you double the atmospheric pressure, you assimilate 3 times the available oxygen into the living system. That means, under pre-flood conditions, kids, if you had been born before Noah's flood, all of your brain cells would be intact. That means you would have over 200 billion brain cells rather than 100 billion brain cells. Now let's calculate for a moment. If you're going to live 12 million years without using up all your brain capacity in our current environment, then that means that your brain capacity in a pre-flood environment was designed to go on for 24 million years? Oh, no. Watch. You multiply 12 million years for that additional 100 billion brain cells by 50,000. That means you get almost or around 2 billion years. I'm sorry, 2 trillion years before you use up your brain capacity. It is absolutely incredible. That matches the creation model, because in the creation model, Adam and Eve, Adam could name all of the beasts of the field and the botanical specimens. Adam and Eve could have immediate fellowship and immediately begin to produce offspring because they arrived fully functional and sophisticated. Just how sophisticated is your brain? Hold to your seats. Are you ready for a ride? Let me show you how sophisticated you really are, even in your damaged ecosphere like we have today. There's a condition where a child is born, and that condition has been called, over a matter of decades, the idiot savant syndrome. Today, the idiot portion has been removed because we're now realizing that the IQ of the person involves more than just the function of the left hemisphere of the brain. It involves the composite of the individual. Every person in this audience is my superior in at least one capacity or another. And most of you are my superiors in more than one capacity. We each have specialization areas. So you have to put it all together. Watch. An idiot savant or a savant syndrome individual is born with the left hemisphere damaged. Research has indicated that that damage can occur by trauma while the mother is gestating that child. It can occur by an accidental blow. It can occur by toxins. It can occur by the untimely release of additional material within the human body itself, such as testosterone, the male hormone that actually destroys brain cells when it comes in contact with them. So all of those are candidates for the explanation as to why this savant syndrome individual has the left hemisphere damaged. But this gives opportunity for the right hemisphere to assimilate more of those cells. Normally these individuals tend to be born prematurely, so they're keeping the brain cells that the mother has genetically produced for them during gestation period. So the right hemisphere of the brain functions more optimally. What can these individuals do? Well, in the 17th century, one of these individuals lived. His name was Jedediah Buxton. Jedediah had an IQ of about 10 years, had to be guarded all his life. Of course, he didn't go to school. He never read a textbook, couldn't read. But instantly, he could calculate any mathematical problem that was given to him. A group of scholars, and it is amazing, Jedediah was seated in one room. The monitors and witnesses were with him. A group of scholars went to another room, formulated a problem. They came in and said, Jedediah, we've got one question for you. They said, how many 1/8 of an inch exist in a cube? I'm going to have the commas in the right place. I'm not Jedediah, so I don't have all the digits correct, but the commas are in the right place, and it is this number of digits. They said, Jedediah, how many 1/8 of an inch exist in a cube? 26,942,684 yards by 6,476,941 yards by 642,489 yards. Instantly, Jedediah gave them the 28-digit number, just like that. Now that's how intelligent you are genetically. You also have that same capacity genetically, but your interest has not been in that area. You've basically been playing with other kids, right? Thinking of, rather than thinking of mathematical problems. But you have that same ability if it were developed. The leading savant of history is alive today. He's going to be with us in the 1997 fair at the Expo Center in Glen Rose. His name is Leslie Lemke. Let me tell you about Leslie. Now, you'll get to meet him on June 13th or 14th, Friday or Saturday. in 1997. Leslie was born 44 years ago in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as a blob. They didn't know who his father was. His mother looked at him. He was blind, had cerebral palsy. He was mentally retarded. He could only hold his appendages like that. He couldn't even move them normally. He was just there. He couldn't take milk. He couldn't swallow. Severely mentally retarded. Until this day, his normal capacity is less than 2 years. Until this day, he can't button or unbutton his shirt. He can't dress himself. When he was 32 years of age, he could not even bring a spoon up to take food. He was born as a blob. And his mother said, "I'm not taking that home." 6 months later, he was skin and bones, weighed less than he did at his birth weight. Cerebral palsy. Had done nothing. They had to feed him intravenously. He had never cried. He couldn't cry. He was just there as a blob. May Lemke took him. When he arrived and she pulled back the wraps, she said, "What'd you do to his eyes?" The nurse said, "Well, he was blind already. We thought the eyes were going to burst, so the doctors took his eyes out." There he was, eyeless, cerebral palsy, mentally retarded, just a blob. They said, "He's going to die in a matter of days. We know you don't want to keep him. We'll take him back." She said, "No, he's not going to die. He's going to live." She took him in the house, held him close. Now, when she did so, that baby for the first time in his life felt loved. She got a bottle ready, but he couldn't take it, couldn't purse his lips, couldn't swallow. She put gruel on the back of his tongue. That's like cream of wheat, kids. Put it on the back of his tongue. Stroked his tongue where he would stroked his chin where he would involuntarily swallow. So he swallowed for nourishment. That night, she held him. She had the bottle prepared. He couldn't take the bottle. She went to sleep holding him. Early the next morning, her husband Joe woke her up and they looked and the bottle was empty. Love does wonderful things. But he still couldn't say anything. When he was 2.5, he'd never even tried to walk. Until this day, all he can do is stumble a bit. May and Joe made a strap and attached him in that strap behind May's legs, and she would hold him close to pull him behind her as just a wee little fellow, to try to teach his body to automatically respond. And he learned to stumble a little bit. When he was a teenager, his left arm started to draw up. She said, "We're not going to have this." So she loved him and continuously massaged his arm, and after a few weeks it straightened back out, but it left one of the fingers paralyzed. Remember, he already had cerebral palsy. Leslie Lemke, then, as a young child, had expressed a different mindset to music. He would perk up when he heard music. So when he was 9 or 10, May had bought for him a little piano, just a small, diminished piano. And she showed him where to form his hands over the notes. So we'd ping a little bit and play simple little tunes a little bit. When he was 14 years of age, May, Joe, and Leslie listened to a television program, and the background theme in music was Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 1, one of the prettiest melodies ever to be heard by human ears. They went to sleep. About 2 in the morning, May punched Joe and said, "Where's that music coming from? Didn't you turn the television off?" He said, "Sure, I turned it off." She said, "Somebody must have turned it back on." She went into Leslie's room where the television was. To her amazement, Leslie was seated at the piano, blind, bent over, arms extended in cerebral palsy, perfectly playing the whole concert of Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 1. It turns out that Leslie can hear any piece of music once. They played for him a 45-minute orchestral concerto. He heard it one time. He can play it again at will. He can hear any piece of music and play it flawlessly when it's on play. When he was on global tour in Norway, the leading maestro, the virtuoso of piano, challenged him. This virtuoso had spent decades developing his talents and skills, and he played his ultimate number. Leslie, can you play that? Yeah. He stumbled to the piano and played it flawlessly. And with tears streaming down his face, the maestro said, I'm a virtuoso. I've spent decades in preparation. Leslie has played it as well as I after hearing it one time. And by the way, he only played it with 9 fingers. I used 10 fingers. He said, Leslie is my master. Let me tell you something else. Are you still awake in these closing moments? Team, they had him in Germany. He'd only heard English. He can repeat what he hears, but he can't carry on a conversation. It's just memory. He'd never heard German. They were singing Amazing Grace in German in the church service. They sang the first stanza. Leslie had never heard German. He was silent. They sang the second stanza. He sang the first stanza that he had just heard. They sang the third stanza. He sang the second stanza. They sang the fourth. He sang the third, simultaneous with them. They stopped. He then sang the fourth. That means that not only could he hear and reproduce, but he can reproduce while he's hearing new information. The most phenomenal savant in the history of the world. Team, that's how intelligent you are. I'm trying to tell you, evolution doesn't work. I'm trying to say creation does work. There is no evolutionary developmental procedure that can explain the savant syndrome. That intelligence, that genetic ability, had to be designed into the living organism. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Who are you? You're an individual made in the image of your Creator. How did you get here? By His special creation. What is your purpose here? It's to know and to fellowship with Him. Where you're going? You have an appointment with your Creator.
All right, people. So I hope you enjoyed the video. A couple things I'd like to say is that this video was done back in 1997. So when they were talking about how many people were on the earth based back in 1997, the math would work out. Currently, we have, what, about 8 billion people, I believe. So it would be accordingly if you would have made the video now. But remember, this video was done back in 1997. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you really look into the ending part where he talks about Leslie Lemke. If you don't believe it, he does have YouTube videos. He is a real person. And yes, that is how your brain was supposed to work. That's how it worked back before the flood. That's how they made the pyramids and they made all the stuff that they made back then, and they didn't have the modern equipment because they used their brain, people. Just like most people in third world countries or in other nationality or countries that actually use their brain to become successful and work things out. Um, you know, it just blows me away. Um, One other thing I'd like for you to look into is the 10 most fascinating savants. It's actually something you can Google. I've printed up the copy before. It talks about Leslie Lemke. It even talks about a guy who is living, who got hit in the head by playing baseball, left side, became super smart. And there's a couple other people, one black dude who made the statues out of memory. It's just amazing what this brain can do. It's, a mystery why God doesn't allow all of us to unlock the mysteries that are in this brain. Trust me, I wish I could hit myself in the head and, you know, open up those dead brain cells. But, I'm not saying go around and knock yourself in the head because you'll probably make yourself worse. But it's amazing how people can deny that we weren't created. I mean, just look at your brain, look at the evidence that's in there. Look at your body, like you said, the reproductive system, the immune system, the respiratory system. I mean, that just couldn't evolve, people. It's just too complicated. People want to deny, even though they know the truth, because they don't want to be exonerated or called a heretic or whatnot. But the truth is out there. Another great video I recommend is the movie called Expelled. It was done by Ben Stein. It also goes into the evidence of creation and how complex the body is. There's a couple things in there that I really don't agree with, because some of the guys that are professors, they say that they don't know where, or they couldn't put the finger on creation, but that's because they were just in that academic field. But the evidence is on there too, especially when it talks about Planned Parenthood and the founder of Planned Parenthood and Hitler, and just how they have so much in common. I mean, there's a lot of truth in that movie. I highly recommended that. Like I said, video was okay to view by Creation Evidence Museum. They gave me permission to view it. I hope you got a good view of it. Like I said, I'm going to download this to my YouTube channel and my Facebook channel and my We Be Free Fellowship channel once I get it uploaded from my phone. I do everything on my phone. So it's going to take me a minute. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, pass it on. There are people out there who are not aware of this evidence. They don't consider it. And like I said, I've seen this video since early 1990s, late 1990s. So it was after 97. So when I came to Christ, 99, 98. So I've had this video for a while. I love watching it, especially about Leslie Lemke. So when you're doubting yourself, thinking that you're stupid or whatnot, I have, you just don't know what God can unlock in your brain. And if you have a child that's dealing with savant syndrome, nourish them in certain fields. You never know. You could have the next Rain Man. You could have the next Leslie Lemke. You don't want to give up hope, because God designed this brain for a reason, to deal with those situations. And if you have a child like that or a family member, you just don't know what's going to unlock that. So don't give up hope. And regardless, God can still talk to them while you are there, and he can still open up their hearts, because he's not going to know everybody's heart. But look into the evidence that's on here. I enjoy Carl Ball. They have a wealth of videos. He does lectures. He's still alive. If you're in Texas, go by and check it out. The evidence is there, that what they dug up just in Texas. So he's been around the world. He's not a fake scholar. It's worth looking into. And if you have the money and the resources, buy his material, pass it on, because that's what I do. I just wish I could do more. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of my day. Peace. I hope it was beneficial, and praise the Lord for the evidence that's out there, and may this help those who are struggling with it.